समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Mahmud Durani, a long-retired Pakistani Major General, was taken away just about a week ago at 84 by a heart condition he had dealt with for more than 4 decades. It was detected while he was still in service as Major General and on his way up, and this probably prevented the celebrated cavalryman, he was from 25th Cavalry of Pakistan Army, from rising much higher. But he used that setback to transform himself into a different figure altogether, from being a man of war to a man of peace. The mostly India-hating Urdu press in Pakistan often derided him as General Shanti. The Indian term for peace was preferred to the Urdu Aman, only to pile on the ridicule, as if to insinuate that he was pro-India, or maybe he spoke in India's voice. Despite his decade in peacemaking, in 2008, the new post-Musharraf Pakistan People's Party government appointed him National Security Advisor. Benazir Bhutto had been assassinated in the run-up to that election, and her husband Asif Ali Zardari was now president. We need to also note that in his post-Op Parakram conciliatory phase, Musharraf had started to lean on Durani for advice. He trusted Durani enough to appoint him ambassador to Washington, where he was trying to clean up Pakistan's act or reputation. Durani as NSA was a big leap for Pakistan, and no surprise that he did not last even a year in that job. He chafed, he was furious after 26/11, seeing it as a deliberate army ISI betrayal and sabotage of the prospects for peace. Under pressure from global outrage, Zardari offered to send him his NSA to India to coordinate investigations and rebuild confidence. The powers that be in Pakistan were furious and overruled this. Durani, however, wasn't one to put up with this. In the first week of January 2009, barely 5 weeks after 26/11, he emphatically told the media that Mohammad Ajmal Kasab was indeed a Pakistani. He said Mohammad Ajmal Kasab is a Pakistani. There is no point denying that fact or hiding that fact. And he also said it made no sense to hide that truth. And he said openly to the media in Pakistan. He was made to resign immediately. Later on, in a visit to India in 2009 to deliver the R.K. Mishra Memorial Lecture at Observer Research Foundation, and then in 2017 to speak at the Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis, he not only repeated the same truth but elaborated on it. He said he had no doubt whatsoever that the ISI had staged 26/11. This is Major General retired Mahmud Durrani, former NSA of Pakistan, saying this, that the ISI had staged 26/11. He had no doubt. You have to have that special courage to say this while living in Pakistan, especially if you are a respected veteran, a decorated combatant in the 1965 war, and a former NSA. That's the courage Durani had. He had this courage. He also had this commitment to peace. He was totally a Pakistani patriot and used to say he would volunteer to go to the front if a war broke out even now. He just believed his country and people's interest was best served by avoiding that war, ideally permanently, and that's why he fought for peace with India. He would also laugh away the ridicule and bear with pride the epithet of General Shanti as a badge of honor. And here is how he pursued his peacemaking. For 2 decades, he was key to high-powered India-Pakistan Track 2 groups, then encouraged by both governments, generally in the 1995-2005 decade. I participated in 3 of about a dozen held under what was called the Balusa group of a dozen people. I participated, say, between 1996 and 1999. About 8 The group had about 8 regular members and the rest floaters. These, as in regular members, included from the Indian side, former IAF chief, Air Chief Marshal S.K. Kaul, his brother and former cabinet secretary P.K. Kaul, and former RAW chief and J&K governor G.C. Gary Saxena. There were others who kept coming in. From the Pakistani side, they were often top former civil servants, and at least once a former army chief, General Jahangir Karamat, and relatively younger politicians, Shahid Khaqan Abbasi and Shah Mahmud Qureshi. The former rose to prime ministership and the latter became foreign minister, whatever those jobs might count for in that country. As you can guess from the few names I have mentioned, most of the participants had been combatants from rival sides, militarily, diplomatically, covertly, or in strategic debates. For the odd editor who was called in, it was an enormous learning experience as the top practitioners on the two sides talked. Sometimes conversations carried on into hour-long walks. I kept memories and sort of uncharacteristically even some notes from one with Durani and a couple of others along Lake Bellagio in Italy. As we go along, I will share some of those recollections with you. See it this way: if some plumbing and wiring in his heart had not caught the attention of his military doctors, and he rose to a 3-star or even a 4-star chief, we would perhaps not be writing obituaries for him in India, and that too complimentary obituaries for him in India. Because even if he had become chief, he would fade away after retiring. He'd be among the few who had no political delusions. He also believed military interference was at the root of many of Pakistan's problems. Because of his health challenges, he was taken away from combat unit commands and seconded out to head Pakistan's Ordnance Factories Board. Given his age and pedigree, he had seen two Pakistani dictators, Zia and Musharraf, up close. He also served both, Zia as an aide, because Zia was senior to him, Zia as an aide, and Musharraf as his envoy to Washington. Two conversations from that long lakeside walk stand out. The first, when I asked him if Zia was indeed as much of an Islamist as we believed he was, he said he didn't start out as one. He was just another garden variety. These are my words. He didn't say garden variety. He was just another garden variety, normal, devout Muslim. But as one audacious move after another worked for him, the coup, throwing out Bhutto, jailing Bhutto, and then hanging him, people around him would tell him that he was divinely chosen and empowered to restore the glory of Islam in Pakistan. This was greatly compounded after the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan and Pakistan finding itself center stage in that jihad. See what have we been telling you? The same chamchas and hangers-on would now tell Zia. Everything from Bhutto making you army chief over the heads of others, your coup, Bhutto's hanging were all planned by the Almighty. That's why there were no implications. No country protested. Nothing happened. You got away with all this. Why? Because it was all planned by God. All of this was done. The divine power had done all of this to position you for this jihad. Or sir, ye to likha hua hai. This has been written in some scriptures. That's how people would come and speak with him. Allah had needed and wanted you here. That's why you are here. Because somebody, obviously the higher power knew because obviously somebody, the higher power knew that there will be an invasion of Afghanistan by infidels and there will be a jihad, and a leader was needed right here in Pakistan. Durani said that by the time operations in Afghanistan really picked up, by this time Zia had started to believe all of this, that he was the chosen one. He said he had been to Mecca with Zia early on, and Zia prayed like the usual believing Muslim. Now he would sit there sometimes for more than an hour, even crying in emotion. His success with his many moves and then the Afghan jihad and his hangers-on, his chamchas, had made him an Islamist. They took away his life as well. Durani had been Musharraf's instructor in at least one of the military academies. After Musharraf seized power and upped terror attacks in India, Durani said he went to see and upbraid him. Kya kar rahe hain aap? Something must have stayed with Musharraf, who reached out to him for the Washington job. Remember, this was also the period that Musharraf worked closely with Vajpayee and later Manmohan Singh for a settlement. In 1965, Durani fought as a cavalry major in the Sialkot sector against the advancing Indian Strike Corps, the 2nd Corps, and 1st Armored Division. He generally had a young officer's skepticism over the capability of rival cavalry commanders, his as well as India's, and said both sides were insipid, routine, completely devoid of ideas, and totally unspectacular in their tactics. In all of that war, he saw one truly brilliant move, he said. This was the Pune Horse Regiment led by Lieutenant Colonel A.B. Tarapur that came in from the rear, at Philora from where they were not expected. That attack coming from a completely unexpected and really clever direction had thrown us back, he said. It was just the vagaries of the battlefield that a random artillery shell hit Tarapur's tank. Tarapur, as we know, was awarded a posthumous Paramveer Chakra. Incidentally, 2nd Lieutenant Arun Khetrapal of the same regiment, 17 Horse or Pune Horse, whose story the new Bollywood release 21 Features won a posthumous Paramveer Chakra for his display of valor in the same sector in 1971. We go back to Durani's story from 1965 though and continue on. Later, as dust settled on that battle, he said, just a little bit hesitatingly, he was almost a little bit sheepishly. He said, we went rummaging through tank wreckages as is routine among us soldiers after exchanging the bodies. I picked up and kept Tarapur's cap and swagger stick. I suggested to him that returning these to his family or regiment might indeed be a good peaceable move. I am not sure he ever did it, but if his family still has these and happens to watch this or read this, it will be an excellent idea to hand these over now as a gesture for all the peace he fought for. It will be the best tribute to the legacy of General Shanti.